Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to another Warhammer tier list video, this time covering the Guard. I am currently playing Guard at an escalation tournament we're holding in my local store, so I've of course been reading up on a lot of Guard rules and things like that. And the Leman Russ is of course going to be a part of my larger army, and I wanted to cover all its variants. Now, this isn't going to just be like raw competitive, only caring about what's the most optimal way to use it. It's going to be a variety of things. How cool I think it is, how effective I think it is, how well it fits into the greater archetype of the Imperial Guard, and things along those lines. Sorry, I'm a bit short of breath for a moment. Anyways, first up, we have the Leman Russ Demolisher. The Leman Russ Demolisher is, of course, equipped with a Demolisher cannon as its main armament, and all of these can share the same hull weapons, that being either a las cannon, heavy bolter on the hull itself, and then two sponsons of either heavy bolters, multi-meltas, plasma cannons, or flamers, heavy flamers. Generally, I'd say that in terms of looks, heavy bolters look the coolest, with plasma cannons in a close second. But of course, just raw power-wise, it's hard to go wrong with 4 extra melta shots on top of your already quite imposing tank, and that especially goes for the Demolisher, as the Demolisher cannon is of course quite close range and quite powerful. It's strength 14, AP 3, damage D6 with D6 plus 3 shots. Very solid and general purpose. Does pay the price though, being the most expensive Leman Russ in the Codex. But I don't think that's going to denote it. The only major problem I have with this thing is I'm not the biggest fan of its muzzle. I think the round, short tip just doesn't look very cool. But I mean, I'm going to give it an A tier at least, just because it's, of course, insanely good, but in the coolest department, which is how cool it looks, it does fall a little behind its contemporaries. I am a big Leman Russ fan, so these guys are likely all going to rank very high, but I wanted to point that out. Next up, we have the classic Leman Russ Battle Tank. This guy is, of course, equipped with the Leman Russ Battle Cannon, which has always been a very general-purpose weapon. In 10th edition, that takes the form of a Strength 10, AP 1, Damage 3 weapon. So very good against light and medium armor, and if you can punch a save through, it's quite devastating against heavy armor, especially things like Terminators or battle tanks, given the fact that it's Damage 3, which is very nice. Of course, same armaments on the hull, and the same points go for that. We're mainly talking about the main turrets here. This guy I like quite a lot. I think this turret looks much cooler than the Demolisher, just because I think the longer barrel lends itself better to the tank type aesthetic. And it's when it comes to shorter barrels, I like them to look more unique than just the round silver nub of the Demolisher. I think the Leman Russ Battle Tank, though, very solid. Probably not my absolute favorite, but I'm going to give it an A tier as well. Next up, we have the Eradicator, the Leman Russ Eradicator. This guy is equipped with a Nova Cannon, which is a directed energy weapon, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not the most familiar with Nova Cannon's fluff, but it's always been a weapon that's excelled at destroying light infantry formations. It definitely suffers a little bit from the lack of instant death in modern-day 40k, but in its role, it still does its job fine. It's just sort of something you don't really go to a heavy tank for, because it's just very good at blowing up things like Imperial Guard and Space Marines, which most of these guys can do thanks to their sponsons and general high number of attacks. Thankfully, this guy does actually have a renewed interest in the Codex, mainly because of the fact that when it's in cover, it's -1 damage. So even though its main cannon isn't that devastating, maybe a couple of multi-meltas in the las cannon just sitting in some cover could definitely be very hard to remove and be very consistent damage. And one thing that I really appreciate about the Nova is how cool it looks. I like the big muzzle brake on it. If I was going to run a Demolisher, I would definitely run it with this barrel, just because I think this looks a lot cooler. It feels a lot more exaggerated and cool looking. There's not much more to say about it. Though I will say in general, this probably isn't the best of the Leman Russes. It's mainly carried by how cool its main turret looks, but I'll be giving it a B tier. Next up, we have the Leman Russ Exterminator. This guy is equipped with a twin-linked Exterminator autocannon, and I'm a huge autocannon fan. I believe I've said that in a few videos now, but in Dawn of War, I love the autocannon. In Heresy, I love autocannons. On Predators, I love autocannons. All those things. Autocannons, to me, are just the coolest weapons. I love huge, slow-firing, big damage projectile weapons in any game. I like when the gun is just going thud, 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 that sort of thing. And so obviously a tank with a huge pair of autocannons is something I'm going to really appreciate. I also think the twin-linked look is just very cool. Its special rule in 10th edition is very nice, giving you bonus AP against a specific target, making everyone a whole lot more dangerous, which is definitely something to be appreciated, especially if you're running something like Mechanized Assault that relies a lot on infantry damage output to really drive the point home. Giving all those lasguns AP1 can make them surprisingly threatening with that +1 to wound. Since I am running Mechanized Assault, definitely need one of these. Also, I just think that this is one of the better Leman Russes in general, and while usually the really good Leman Russes get an A tier, I'm going to give him an S tier because he looks really cool. Next up, we have the Leman Russ Vanquisher, famous for its gun being just really good at hitting one super powerful shot. That manifested itself as Armor Bane back in the day, meaning it was pretty darn consistent at blowing holes in tanks from whatever armor face it may be. But now it's just a big strength 18 AP 4, if I'm not mistaken, D6 plus 6 shot, which is just insanely powerful. Very swingy, of course. It plays into that human instinct to bet everything on red. And for that, I do appreciate it. I'm an orc player, so I like really silly nonsense like that. So the Vanquisher is definitely a favorite of mine. I also think it has a nice role in just how cheap it is. I believe it is the cheapest of the Leman Russes, which means that you have that super tanky tank profile, of course. That's a bit redundant, isn't it? That can just roll around, and every so often this thing will just one-shot an enemy battle tank or leave it in critical condition. And then once you wrap in the las cannon and the plasmas or the meltas, you have a very solid tank hunter right here. I believe it's about 150 points. I've always been a big fan of the Vanquisher, and I think it does its job perfectly. I will be giving it do I want to give this one? Nah, I'm going to give it an A tier. Top of A tier, though. I just like the look of the Exterminator a little bit more. Next up, we have the Leman Russ Executioner. Definitely one of the coolest tanks in all of 40k, mainly because its main armament is a giant plasma cannon. And plasma weapons are just inherently the coolest weapons in 40k, in my opinion. Of course, being a plasma weapon, it excels at hunting infantry, armored infantry, and anything lighter, of course. Back in the day, it had a big blast and would just rip through infantry very quickly. And that's no different today. Of course, it's got a lot of shots, all specifically designed to tear through infantry. But being plasma, it's also quite general purpose, excelling in vehicle terms against things like rhinos, predators, gladiators, where it can do a lot of damage very quickly thanks to its big flat damage attacks. Also, just having a triple plasma tank is the coolest thing ever. While most people will generally bring the multi-meltas if they're trying to be competitive, I think if you bring an Executioner, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not bringing the plasma cannons. And the funniest thing is, sometimes your tank will just blow itself up from hazardous tests, which is always fun. And who knows, maybe it'll explode after that and do some more damage to your own army. I love the Executioner, though. I'm definitely going to be including one in my list as just a beefy tank that's really good at shooting infantry and is pretty general purpose even outside of that, being quite good into things like Space Marines, Terminators, all sorts. Next up, we have the Leman Russ Punisher. This is a specialized light infantry hunter, quite famous for its Punisher Gatling cannon, which has a whopping 20 attacks and has for, as long as I can remember at least, 20 attacks at strength 5, whatever it may be. This is a tank that is just undeniably cool. It has a massive, basically like a Warthog Gatling cannon on it. But it definitely is unfortunate that it is in the Guard, because if there's one thing Guard already have enough of, it's anti-infantry firepower. Pretty much every tank, walker, whatever it may be, has a heavy bolter stapled onto it, and then a bolter on the top as well, just to drive home the point that these guys really tear through enemy infantry very fast. So it is slightly overkill to bring a whole tank for it. However, the style points do justify it quite well, and it does at least tear through enemy infantry very, very effectively. This tank is one that just kind of doesn't have a role, because of the army it's in, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If you are running something like a lot of Vanquishers, for example, you're running a bunch of Vanquishers, just big one-shot attacks, then bringing one of these could be a lifesaver, just to make sure that enemy infantry don't get too close. It even gets, I believe it's devastating wounds against infantry. Yeah, this guy is, again, carried a lot by its style points, and its niche isn't the most needed, but when it is, there's no one that does it better than this guy. I'm going to give him an A tier as well. So definitely a bit of a shorter video today covering the various Leman Russes, but I'm a big Leman Russ fan. I always have been, so it's just kind of fun to talk about my thoughts on them. So let me know what you thought down below. Did I rate anything too high, too low? Remember, I'm not a hyper cutthroat competitive player, so I'm not thinking in the terms of, well, how is this tank only good for its points, or is it only good on paper, or is, whatever it may be. I'm more looking at it from a general perspective, how effective it is, the niche it fills, how cool it is, that sort of thing. And I will see you all next time.